Watches are not made for telling time. And if you disagree, tell me where and when, and we can settle it. Nah, I'm just joking. But it is a phrase that I've been saying for quite some time that many people think I'm crazy for. How can a device literally designed to show the time not be built for that? It sounds quite curious and contradicting. And if you're too lazy to watch the whole video, here it is simple. Watches are an accessory that curiously also tell time. But now if you want to stay and chat to understand my point of view, welcome. Now let's start from the beginning. Many people always tell me, why spend so much money on a watch when my $2 watch tells me the same time? And you know what? They're definitely right. Because I'm not spending money on a device that can tell the time. Maybe they are, and that's completely fine. Now, if we get serious, how many of the things you use do you really need? Nowadays, if you have your cell phone, you really don't need a watch. Sometimes it's easier just to see the time on your phone screen. But let me ask you, what is your jewelry for? What are your necklaces, rings, diamonds for? What good is it to have the most sporty car? Do you really need to have the fastest one, even if you never take it to the track? Do you really need to have the biggest diamond on your finger? I don't really think so. So why do we do it? Why spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on machines that we don't use for their purpose? And before, my argument was that it all depended on the price you paid. I intended to separate the premise that a luxury watch was not for telling time, while an affordable watch was. But then I remembered this Casio. And with this, maybe what is it, $40, $20, I don't know. My whole argument fell apart because this watch taught me that any watch of any price range can and will be an accessory. It is an accessory that also tells the time, but still an accessory. Many people use them because they're watches that look vintage, and maybe they want more of a hipstery style and they want the watch to reflect that style. So in this case, this watch is not for telling time. It is an accessory that has a vintage look that will help reinforce, that vibe of how you want to dress. Now I think this discussion depends a lot on what you're looking for in your watch, and above all, what you want to say to the world. If by any chance you have a job where you need to know the time and not have to take out your cell phone, then you do need a watch on your wrist, of course, to see the time. And I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, every summer I went camping to Minnesota. But at that camp, they didn't let us bring our cell phones. And after the first summer I went, I realized that it was frustrating for me not to know what time it was. So the following summer, I asked my dad to buy me a G-Shock. In that case, of course, that watch was specifically to see the time. But it also was a watch that could withstand water, mud, shocks, everything. Because of course I was going camping. Why do you think so many people invest in how they look? Why do so many people spend so much money on their shoes, on their sneakers, on their clothes? I think the same argument could be made saying that designer t-shirts are not for keeping you warm, or designer jackets are not for heat. Why spend thousands of dollars on a jacket when you can buy one for $20 at Walmart? People spend money on things to convey something. What do they want to convey, and to whom do they want to convey it? That's where everything changes. And I'll give you a very quick example that I've already talked about. What do you think Rolex, AP, and Richard Mille sell? Many people would say that they sell watches, and they would be wrong. Those three brands sell power and exclusivity. Generally, and not always, but generally, the people who buy them want to convey that they have power, that they have money, and that they were able to get something that is exclusive, that not everyone can get. Now here's another question for you. Why do you think rappers put diamonds on their watches and jewelry? And here, I ask you to go back to the question. What do you want to convey, and to whom do you want to convey it to? What do the rappers want to convey? Of course, they want to show off that they have money. Now, easily, they could go buy a $150,000 Je l'écoute, Giro Tourbillon. But the average person wouldn't understand why that watch was so expensive. Because to understand it, you have to be educated on the subject. But it's easier to understand, Cartier, Rolex, AP, as they are exclusive watches that cost a lot of money. But now, how do I make it look like I have even more money? Easy. I'll fill it up with diamonds. That's easy to understand for 99% of the world. We all know that diamonds are expensive. We all know that gold as a material is also expensive. Now then we go in another direction, where we are given the opportunity for literal works of art to be part of our clothing. And here is where brands like Jacob & Co. and Jacquet Ross come in. Watches that combine technology with works of art, which obviously are watches that cost millions of dollars. They have precious metal, diamonds, but they are also handmade masterpieces. Some play the Godfather music, some have rotating planets with satellites and moons. And no matter if you don't like the brand, I challenge you to tell me that this is not a work of art. Yes, the watch tells the time, but it is not designed for that. And then, on the other side, we have watches that are extremely technological. Movements with insane complications. Perpetual calendars, watches that tell time using liquid, watches that are a masterpiece of engineering and research and development that also tell the time, but not just designed to tell it. If it was about telling time, why would we complicate things so much? Why develop new movements, new technology? A very clear example I can give to you is diving watches. They are designed to measure the time you spend underwater. Interestingly, they also tell the time. But be honest, how many divers do you know who really use a watch for diving? And even if some do use one, 100% of divers use a dive computer. So even if the diver's watch is designed for dives in the ocean, people don't really use it for that. Do you think people will buy a Rolex Submariner to go diving? Of course not. And even though it started out being designed for that, it no longer is. With this, I mean that products eventually evolve. For example, M&Ms were designed to be a snack for soldiers, but now they are chocolate for everyone. Jeeps were designed for the military. Now they are driven by 15 or 20-year-old girls. And an example inside the world of watches, we have the Cartier Santos, which was designed for the pilot Alberto Santos Dumont. And it was a tool watch. And now it is a luxury watch. And although watches were initially tools that told the time, little by little their purpose was refined. And now many watches are an accessory or an extension of your personality. Certainly, there are watches that remain tools that only serve to tell the time. But I think that today, most watches have become more of a statement of your style, of how much money you make, or your knowledge. And of course, they also tell time. But what do you think?